very excited to have you all here for our youth civil society consultation. I'm going to pass it off to our co-chairs to do a little introductions and kick off the event.
Good morning, everyone. Oops. Should we start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Pamela Morgan, and I am delighted to be here. This is such an important gathering because your voices are critical to the success of the Nairobi Civil Society Conference, whether you're going to be there in person or whether you're just going to give information that will be carried by someone else. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to a productive meeting.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Ivy Cook. I'm very happy to be here with you. And yes, as Pamela said, we really look forward to your input. And as you know, I mean, you're going to get so much background on this. I'm sure the levels of understanding of what's happening in Nairobi next week is probably varied in this group, and your involvement as well. Pamela and I will be there in person. And so if any of you are going to be there, it would be wonderful to meet you. So if you see us around, just, say hello. But I just wanted to just welcome you to this. And thank you to Rachel and Annabelle for organizing this.
Thank you so much, Ivy. We are going to kick things off with an introductory panel where you will all hear what you should know about Nairobi and Summit of the Future and how you can engage. Next, we'll have opportunities for you to tell us your stories and highlight your advocacy priorities related to each topic that will be addressed at Summit of the Future. And once we've had a chance to focus on these topics, we'll come back together and see what the key takeaways were to develop some advocacy recommendations that can be used by youth advocates at Nairobi, around Nairobi, and leading up to Summit of the Future. So now I'll pass it to my co-chair, Annabelle Gregg, to start today's panel.
Thanks, Rachel. We're really excited to have some of the co-chairs of the Nairobi Planning Subcommittee here today. But I also know that they're all insanely busy getting ready for Nairobi in a few days. So bear with us as we deal with outside influences getting ready. But yeah, to kick off this consultation, we'll hear some insights on what went into planning this conference, how young people can get involved, and how Nairobi will set the stage for Summit of the Future. And we should have some time for Q&A at the end as well. But if you have questions while our speakers are talking, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. And it looks like we'll be starting with, oops, sorry, I'm doing like 3 things at once. So, Ishan, can I have you, I'm going to skip around our agenda just because I think we're waiting for Terry. Do you think I could tap you first to give us a little insight onto the conference?
Yeah, of course. Happy to jump in.
Great, take it away. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Annabelle and Rachel, and to everyone who'd put this together. It's so great to be with you all and to see some familiar spaces. And youth advocates, and one of the expert subcommittee for the Nairobi conference happening next week. Can you hear me okay? I think.
Yeah, you're cutting out for a sec, but I think you're back.
All right, okay. Yeah, just to say, great to be here. I'm Ishan, one of the co-chairs of the expert subcommittee for the Nairobi conference happening next week. And yeah, we're looking forward to welcoming many of you to Nairobi for the Civil Society Conference in support of the Summit of the Future. For those who are unaware of the Summit of the Future, it's a conference being held in September. The outcome of the Summer of the Future will be a pact for the future, which is split into 5 separate chapters, which I believe that we're all going to be discussing today. And really the aim of the Summer of the Future is to look at what are the institutional shifts that are required to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals. How can we turbocharge action, and how can we really reform the UN to deliver for people and planet, but particularly for those who are and those who continue to be left behind. And really the Nairobi Civil Society Conference is a moment for us as civil society to come together and to really signal to member states that actually these key reform proposals that are coming out for the Pact for the Future can only be implemented in intergenerational and multi-stakeholder ways. And we're here to show member states that actually by meaningfully engaging civil society, and that includes children and young people, we can progress and catalyze effective action in a more effective way. And so really excited to jump in the discussions. I'll leave more of the details on how you can get involved to Yanda. She has been spearheading this within the planning committee. So we'll leave that to her, but really excited to dive into more of the substance of the Pact for the Future itself, the key gender issues that are being discussed. And I should signpost as well that gender equality is supposed to be a cross-cutting issue across the Pact for the Future. The current draft of the Pact for the Future is about 242 pages long. It's a very long text, and it is certainly not a feminist Pact for the Future. There is a lot of work that needs to be done. The next revised version of the Pact for the Future, which we call Rev 1, will be circulated hopefully on the 13th of May after the Nairobi conference. It will be condensed from 200 pages to about 20 pages, and the language of the pact will change. It will be very broad language for heads of state and government to adopt. So it will look very similar to the SDG political declaration that was adopted last year. But essentially, we won't expect all of the nitty-gritty issues to be discussed in the Pact for the Future, which means that we will see a lot of watered down language, a lot of diluted language, and this points to an even more important need for us as feminists to mobilize and really push with member states to make sure that we're not only fighting for the bare minimum of gender language, but to encourage them to look at new language, new ways of addressing gender equality, new ways of dismantling patriarchal structures, and really with a future-oriented mindset looking ahead. What do we need to see in terms of achieving gender equality, not just at 2030, but looking at to 2045 and also the road to 2100 too. But I'll leave it there for now and pass back to you, Annabelle.
Thanks so much for that, Ishan. Now I'll pass it to Terry, one of the intergenerational youth co-chairs, to give us a little background. Terry, I think I saw you join.
Hello, everyone. My name is Terry Otieno. I am one of the intergenerational and youth subcommittee co-chairs in the planning committee of the CSO conference. So sorry, guys, I've been up and down. I had to travel to my rural home, and then, we have floods. So I'm just like everywhere. But yeah, I'm glad to be here. And I'm going to speak on the role of the intergenerational and youth subcommittee. But one thing we have to note is that we have what was stipulated and what we are doing. So what was stipulated was we were supposed to maintain contact between civil society of all generations for specific events and ensure that the needs and interests of all generations are represented at the conference. So basically trying to balance out demographics in terms of, especially age-wise. So that was what we were supposed to do. Also supposed to make sure that we work with, again, everyone, that is in the youth, the elderly, and encourage interactions on sharing of experiences, including exploring similar. But what have we been doing? What we have been doing is, can break it down, where as a committee we have ensure religions, like literally organization and purpose. That is what we have been doing, and we've been trying so much to reach out to people, evidenced by the fact that we had a child speaker during our second briefing. I hope many of us joined. And we have also tried so much to have an inclusive program that, again, I will touch on towards the end of my presentation. we have designed sessions together to have intergenerational speakers as well. And because of this program, we have even gone further to create a youth hub with a capacity of about 30 to 40, and it has a round table. And so that's just how much we want to make sure that the intergenerational space or intergenerational presence during the CSO conference is felt, heard, and will be substantive. And then we've also been using technology integration. I mean, we have a team of members who are doing really good work to produce good videos that we disseminate and send out to our social media handles for greater outreach. It has been amazing trying to create and sustain this intergenerational space using technology. So technology has really been good. We have a lot of commit videos. We have a lot of our videos, like our first briefing is already online. Our second briefing is on the way. Like, we are just to harness our power as intergenerational, how to share opportunities and bring people together. And then through all this, we have had knowledge sharing, where because of trying to be inclusive, using technology and creating adequate programs, we are sharing a lot of knowledge, not only about what the conference is about, how to participate, but this process of doing so, we are also on what to do after this CSO conference, leading into the summit of the future and beyond. And then we also have sustainability and legacy, where we have ensured that we are arranging the programs at the moment as a and youth subcommittee, which is the mandate we have. But then, because we had other youth mandates roles before we had these role as co-chairs or members of the subcommittee, we are leveraging. I come from a youth NGO, spreading word about it, making sure that people know that there's a youth mechanism that involves, and a youth mechanism that can allow you to get involved as an individual or as an organization. And that is us looking for a way to sustain youth and also intergenerational progress going forward. But much more, we're also a part of one of the impact coalitions that will make sure that this intergenerational aspect that has started in the CSO conference will be carried forward. Because most of the times we have an MGOS of aging, and we also have an MGOS on youth. And so the impact coalition that is now combining the intergenerational and youth is giving us a very unique opportunity to make sure that we carry on forward and become sustainable using the events that we have started creating in our capacity as co-chairs of the intergenerational and youth subcommittee. So I would now want to talk about hybrid conference programs, but just to note and highlight this, that all the programs I'm going to talk about are available at the 2024 UN Civil Society Conference website. So if you Google exactly what I've said, you're going to get the official UN Civil Society website. But at the same time, I am going to the charts and posting that website as we speak. And so some of the programs that I've already posted it, by the way. So some of the programs I'm going to mention are here. And if you look at the tabs on top, you're going to find that you can navigate the chart. So like you can navigate the website to make sure that if you want to know things about the Impact Coalition, there's a specific tab for it. If it's the program, there's a specific tab for it. But we all know that we can no longer register to attend the civil society conference in person. And so this is where the hybrid conference programs, in addition to the off-site events that have a virtual participation, are important to us. So again, whatever it is I'm going to say might be brief, but if you follow that link, you will be able to find out all of the sessions I will mention and many more, because the website is being updated on a daily basis. So you might be in it today and you're like, oh, I like this session, but they do not have a virtual link. They do not have a way for me to register. If you go back to the website a day after, that is tomorrow, you're going to find these links. So we're working like on round the clock. So whatever it is you don't find today, you will find the next day. So keep on checking, keep on looking to find the information that you want. And so we have the opening session that will be streamlined at the UNTV. And so again, if you go to the website, the UN Civil Society website, you're going to find a place to register the DGC. Otherwise, if you don't feel like registering, just know that if you go to the normal UN Web TV, they always highlight whatever it is that is happening, like they're timely, like they're on point. So if you go there on 9th at the time where this opening session is beginning early in the morning, after the stakeholder caucus, that is at 9. So the stakeholder caucus is at 8 to 9, then opening is from 9 to 10. So if you go to the website, you're going to get these times that I am talking about right now. And so that opening session will be online, so you don't need to register anywhere. You will just find these session being broadcasted, and you can just watch it live. And then we have informative workshops. Some of them will be hybrid, but let's not call them hybrid per se. We can call them, they will have virtual attendance. This is because they can send out a Zoom link where you can join, but then it will be the real or actual hybrid setup. But then as someone who is not on site at the UN office in Nairobi, you will still be able to listen in, and then there will be someone who will be taking care of the online participation. So you will get a chance to ask questions and your clarifications at the same time. And so we have also a session on Pact of the Future, time with civil society in the afternoon, and interactive dialogue interventions. If you go to the website and look at the program day 1, you will see the activities that are mentioned. During day 2, which is 10th, day 1 is 9th. On 10th May, again, we will have interactive dialogues as the first session. That will have a virtual participation through the UNTV. Then we'll have impact coalitions that you can join through virtual links, such as Zoom. Then you have discussion on Summit of the Future. Then we have the closing session and networking town hall message that will bring a close to the conference. So those are just the activities. They might seem detailed or shortened, but if you go to the website, there's broader description of this session and what the objectives are, what the expected outcomes, and how you can participate. And so I'm looking forward to all of us. I can see at some moment there, I looked and we were around 95. I'm sure right now we are more than 100 or something, but I'm looking forward to all of us participating either virtually or in person, regardless of the way you participate. That does not mean you get to give much more or less. It will be equal, because there will be rapporteurs and moderators to make sure that both in-person and online people who want to have their voices heard during the civil society conference are given the opportunity to do so. So I will end my presentation there, and if there are any questions and time to answer a few, I will do so. Back to the moderator.
Thank you so much, Terry, for all of that information. I know we advertise this like if you're going to Nairobi or if you're not going to Nairobi, but it sounds like for those that came that aren't going to Nairobi, you can still kind of go to Nairobi and be really involved virtually. So thank you for all of that information. Now I'll pass it to our last panelist, who I think can share her screen, hopefully. But Yande, the floor is yours, the social media, or multimedia and social media co-chair. Take it away.
Thank you, Annabelle. Can you see my screen? It should be showing the Prezi book we have developed.
Yes, I can also see me, but we can see your screen.
Perfect. Just a second, let me make sure that the words are visible. Hello everyone, my name is Yande Banda. I'm one of the co-chairs for the Media, Multimedia and Social Media Committee for the UNCSC. Essentially what our work is amplifying the work of young people and the work of people in older generations during the conference and encouraging everyone to engage throughout the entirety of the conference through the impact coalitions, through the interactive dialogues and through the plenary. I'm seeing that my slides are not showing fully, but essentially what I wanted to talk you through is how you can engage through the conference itself and how you can ensure that you are meaningfully involved in the outcomes of it. With this playbook, essentially we've divided it into preparing, planning, designing, engaging, as well as learning. In order to prepare, we're asking you to ask yourself these 4 questions. What are you most passionate about in terms of the conference and defining your goals? How can you commit to the Pact for the Future and Sustainable Development Goals? How can you build a team with multiple generations? And how can you develop your message and your plan? In terms of developing what you're most passionate about, there are 16 impact coalitions for this conference, and each impact coalition has its own specific outcomes and goals. What we're asking you to define prior to the conference and even during the hybrid format is what are you most passionate about, and how can you bring the recommendations of your individual self, your activism, but also your community to the conference. We're also asking you to commit your passion to the Pact for the Future and Sustainable Development Goals. The role of this civil society to influence the language of the pact. It's to influence the pact, but also to ensure that our individual communities are represented in this pact. Our language in terms of gender, our language in terms of inclusion, our language in terms of diversity. We're asking you to take this passion, reform it into language, and to actively participate and meaningfully engage to bring it to the forefront of the conference. But also, the importance of community is important. We're asking you to build a team with multiple generations to push forward this language. But lastly, develop a message and a plan in how you can engage. I'm going to be speaking to the plan in terms of how you, as a person attending the conference, either in the hybrid format, the virtual format, or in person, can participate at the conference. The first thing is the We Commit Challenge. Now, the We Commit Challenge essentially is a challenge that we created, encouraging stakeholders to commit to the future. All we're asking you to do is film a video that's about 1 minute to 1 minute 30 seconds long, filming what your commitment is to young people, to people of older generations, to people in your community in preparation for the Nairobi conference, building up to the Summit of the Future. An example of a commitment can look like, I commit to ensuring that leaders in my country are held accountable to the outcomes of the Impact Coalition, building up to the Summit of the Future process, ensuring that everybody in their diversity and intersectional identities are involved. That's rather long, but anything does. The second thing is a youth reporter program. Youth reporters have been deliberately placed during the entirety of the conference to influence the language of the conference, but also to influence the language of impact coalitions, encourage stakeholders to commit to the outcomes of young people within the different communities that we come from. If you will be attending the conference itself, you're going to see the youth reporters in their t-shirts, and they most likely will be running around the different rooms, ensuring that media is represented in terms of youth representation. We're encouraging you to spot them, go up to them, and you might be able to film your We Commit Challenge video with them, but you might also be able to hand into them recommendations from your community to pass on to the higher level stakeholders that they will be interviewing. They'll also most likely be at the front of the rooms in impact coalitions and documenting what you're saying and posting it on our social media platforms to be reposted by the network of over 100 larger organizations to ensure that your voice is heard. The third thing is in regards to our Instagram, our Twitter, and our LinkedIn. I'm encouraging everyone to follow the UNDGC social media on Instagram, on Twitter, as well as LinkedIn to receive more information about the conference and the build up to it, but also during it as well. You will be seeing multiple tweets because we are live action tweeting the entirety of the conference through the UNDGC, but also through C4UN, and you will be seeing the youth reporters reporting live on what you are saying live and in person, but also in the virtual format. The last thing is regards to the impact coalitions. It's so important that you're represented at the impact coalitions, the discussions to do with it, but also in terms of the leadership of it. We are calling you to meaningfully engage with the impact coalitions, be present in the room, push your language, but also encourage higher level stakeholders by tweeting to them through social media, tagging them, engaging the youth reporters to tweet out your recommendations as well, to ensure that your goals, your collective, your communities are represented. In terms of design, I know it's so blurry, but I promise I'm going to send this presentation to you via email. I'll send it to NGO CSW so you can receive it. In terms of design, all we're asking you is, how are you designing your project, and how are you designing your recommendations, and how are you designing your outcomes to bring to the conference? To design an outcome, all we're asking you to do is be inclusive, intersectional, diverse, but most importantly, bring the representations of your community to the conference. This is a civil society conference, and not only that, it's a civil society conference being held in Kenya. Most UN conferences are held in New York, and this is truly a premier event in that it's being held in Africa. So we are asking you to design your messaging to represent your community, and we're asking you to represent your community at the conference. Represent your story, because this is what this entire conference is about. The last slide is in relation to the We Commit Challenge, and also in terms of the social media platforms that we'll be using to amplify the conference. I hope this presentation has assisted you in providing an understanding of how exactly you can engage in the Nairobi conference, and the ways that we have provided for you to actively be a part of this process and designing the language for the Pact for the Future, but also in terms of engaging on a media level. We're encouraging you again to follow these social media platforms to continue to get more updates. But the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is in terms of our Trello board. The Trello board has been designed by the media committee to include all of the updates in regards to the conference, but also because we wanted to amplify your work and the work you do in your communities. We have created something we call the Global Mosaic. The Global Mosaic essentially is where you can put in your community project or your project that you have led individually. And I'll put this in the chat. What we're asking you to do is put in whatever work you are leading in your different communities, locally, nationally, globally, into the Global Mosaic to amplify your work, as thousands of stakeholders have access to this Trello board. Most importantly, I want to end by saying the UN Civil Society Nairobi Conference is a conference created for you, by you, through the planning committee, the young people present in this committee, and we're asking that you engage fully and meaningfully and ensure that your voices are heard. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Yande. Oh, I turned my camera off, so I wasn't on the spotlight. That was really helpful, and I know that we got some comments in the chat that it was blurry, but it's okay. We added it in the chat if you want to look through it yourself, and I know that Yande mentioned that she would be sending it to us to distribute. So if you couldn't see it, don't worry. Great. So I saw like one or two questions in the chat that I'll ask our panelists. And if anyone else has any, we have a few minutes to ask our panelists questions. Tabitha, you were the first question I had, Tabitha. So if you want to unmute and ask it instead of me asking it, go for it. Tabitha Wangechi, feel free to ask your question.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. My name is Tabitha Wangeshi. I'm the founder of Digital Rules. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya, and what we do is basically connect marginalized communities to the internet and protect them while they're using the internet. So through the presentation, I can't help it but thank Terry and Yande for the great presentations. But however, I have concerns about meaningful participation of young people in the conference, because as I went through the event agenda, I noticed that it's a very high level meeting. So I'm wondering, what are these spaces that have been created inside the program, you know, at the UN, for those of us who will be there physically, and even those joining virtually, to meaningfully participate and contribute, and not just as sideshows, or I know they are youth reporters and that's an amazing initiative, but how else are young people being involved meaningfully in this conference? Because even at Yande's presentation, I couldn't help but try to pinpoint exactly where young people are being involved, but it's more of social media engagement and, the global mosaic and, just sharing impact stories. But if you mean that as young people, we should join the sessions and contribute our views, that's good, but it would have been great if we had a physical convening of young people only to share our voices, because sometimes we are overpowered by more dominant voices in such rooms for those of us who participate in these meetings. So if we could have a youth cluster, that would be amazing for us to channel our voices without being, watered down by other dominant voices in the room. So thank you so much.
Do any of our panelists want to comment on that? I think the question is in-person youth spaces at the conference.
Well, so the unique thing about the CSO conference is the intergenerational aspect. As I mentioned before, most of the times we always separate the youths and then we put the older, like the seniors, separate. So what happens is if you plan sessions that are just youth-led and youth-focused, then the youth are talking to the youth. And as much as that will be fun, the aspect of learning and sharing is not there. So this is why this setup is important. Much as we are integrating and trying to make sure that we hear from the young people and also seniors, this does not mean any message is, altered or watered down. The thing that happens is now this message becomes, like more substantive, because it has both the viewpoint of a young person coming up whose future is today, and we have that person who has been there before telling you this is what happened. And so if you're looking at the future, consider 1, 2, and 3. So for us, I think so far so good. If in all the sessions that have been prepared, including the first and second briefing, this has been visible, the positive part of mixing demographics in terms of age, types of organization, the focus of the organization, gender. It's better when you combine people and come up with substantive output compared to singling each group out. I will encourage all of us to join at least one intergenerational session, because we have the intergenerational hub, and a lot of these sessions will be hybrid. So if you join, you're going to be able to observe and be a part of this setup to see the effects of what I've just described and much more. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Ishan, Yande, anything before we move on?
I would just add as well that I think the whole essence of this Nairobi conference is to look at how can civil society youth support the UN, support member states with the implementation of the pact itself. I think, as I mentioned at the beginning, the Pact for the Future is going to be a very broad document. It's not going to cover everything, but there are many key proposals to strengthen and support the work of the UN and member states that civil society and young people have been carrying out for so long. So these impact coalitions are a good starting point insofar that, if young people want to engage and want to connect, I would encourage you to reach out to the conveners and encourage you to really call on them to work in partnership with young people on community spaces and on the implementation of their work plans as well. I think, as with many other UN conferences, funding is always really hard. We're not going to be able to get all of the young people we need to see in the room. That's a structural and a systemic barrier. And I think the youth that are on the planet are really making sort of an intentional effort to make sure, and then this is some thinking that we're doing within the Young Feminist Caucus too, is how do we make sure that actually the spaces that we convene in Nairobi recognize and acknowledge the fact that not everyone who needs to be there in person is there, and how do we bring others online into the conversation in a way that's not tokenistic. And I think this is where like the principles of feminist organizing come into play, and something that we're very intentionally trying to think through. But yeah, I think it's all about the implementation side of things. And I think the space that we hold in Nairobi isn't the beginning, and it's
youth consultation something.
Sorry,
So youth consultation something you end. There is something I.
The space that we hold in Nairobi is not the beginning, and it's not the end either. The Summer of the Future is a much bigger process that's looking not only to 2030 but also beyond.
Just to add, sorry, just a little inclusion, just recognizing that there is a power dynamic between young people involved in these conversations, as well as higher level stakeholders. But I just wanted to also say that this is a civil society conference. It's not a member state-led conference. And part of civil society, a critical component of civil society, is the voices of young people. We have the Intergenerational and Youth Hub, which will be present at the conference, where young people can obviously engage with the storytelling component of it, the media component of it, but also having discussions with higher level stakeholders who will be present at the conference itself. I'm really encouraging us as young people to have a loud voice during the discussions of the impact coalitions, as well as for the interactive dialogue and the workshops that are present. Bumping into a high level stakeholder, a president, whoever it may be, if you do have access to them, speaking about these issues that young people are facing, recognizing the power dynamic, calling for meaningful engagement is important.
Thank you all for that. I see we have a lot of hands. I think we're already like running out of time. I think we can take one more from Anush. You're the first on my screen, but then Watara, Haran, Wanja, everyone that's signed up, just drop your questions in the chat and we will get to them. We just want to get to our consultation too. So Anush, please keep it brief, but go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the background noise. I'm outside right now. So I had a couple of questions regarding the conference itself and young people. Since, the outcome document of this conference is going to be the co-chair's summary, if I'm not wrong, how can we expect young people's issues to be, there in that summary? So that's my first question. The other one is, the pact is not really that, pact does not cover the issues of marginalized young people, their SRHR related issues, and everything that comes along with it. So will this conference actually be effective enough for us to, bring up those issues from, let's say the APFSD Youth Forum call to action that was launched in February, or the Global Youth Dialogues Youth Agenda document that was launched recently. So will there be space for us as young people to highlight those recommendations and also the issues of marginalized young people, so that, the issues are highlighted in the co-chair summary, and also that, that summary can impact the pact, which is, I think, we are nearing the second draft of pact, if I'm not wrong. So that's my question.
I can come in on the question of the pact, and then perhaps hand over to Yanda and Terry on sort of what the or how the youth reporters will be looking at. So the co-chair summary will contain summaries of the workshops and of the impact coalitions and that sort of thing. And that's what the youth reporters and the different reporters will be collating that information on. So, if you're going to be there in Nairobi, or if you're participating online, and if that workshop allows you to be interactive, then, take the space, speak about the issues that you feel most passionate about and that you feel need to be reflected in the co-chair summary, and then hopefully the reporters will be taking notes of that, and that will feed into the co-chair summary. In terms of the pact itself, Nairobi is a moment to feed into the pact, yes, but the negotiations have been going on since January, and there were consultations even in December of last year. So, if there is language that you feel needs to be reflected in the pact for the future, then I would encourage you to engage with your delegation, today, engage with your member states now, because that process is ongoing. The co-facilitators, Germany and Namibia, are currently working on simplifying and sort of streamlining the compilation text into a new version of the Pact for the Future that will be circulated on the 13th of May, hopefully. Also, we have to understand as well, the Summer of the Future is an intergovernmental process. And at the end of the day, it's the UN. The UN convenes 193 member states, 193 member states, often with very different positions. As many of us who are familiar with UN processes know, that the outcomes of these summits and conferences aren't as ambitious as we as young people wish them to see. And it's often the case that when we as young people mobilize and we publish youth declarations and youth recommendations, they are far more ambitious and far more strong in terms of language and recommendations and calls to action than what the member states themselves are agreeing to. And I think that's what the essence of the Nairobi Civil Society Conference is about. It's about saying that, yes, there's an intergovernmental process. Yes, we will support that process, and we will keep pushing with member states to make sure the Pact for the Future is as ambitious and action-oriented as possible. But also we have to recognize that the member states won't agree on everything that we want to see in the pact. And this is our chance, civil society, to come together and convene, for example, these impact coalitions, but also to connect with other like-minded civil society and work together on how we can really make sure that the issues that don't get agreed by consensus by the member states are not lost in thin air, because many of the issues that we are each of us fighting for on an everyday basis are equally as important as each other. And just because the member states can't agree on it doesn't mean that we can't go forward and continue our work in pushing forward that concrete change.
Thanks, Ishan. Yande, Terry, any thoughts on the youth reporter comment?
Just to say, we have about 3 youth reporters for every single impact coalition, and I wanted to emphasize this. Youth reporters are young people, so we have deliberately placed them to listen to the voices of young people, getting your language from your communities, your representations, and providing it in the summary to the co-chairs. I want to assure everyone in this room as well that while this is in part an extremely political process, an intergovernmental process, the voices of civil society cannot go undermined or undervalued. And the voices of youth alike cannot go undermined and undervalued in this process. Multiple things have been put in place to ensure that the voices of young people hopefully are reflected in the message from the co-chairs, as well as in the pact overall. But again, raising your voice during the conversations that take place in the impact coalitions, raising your voice to higher level stakeholders, the co-facilitators who will be present at the conference itself, providing your recommendations, inputting into your language and pushing them into the co-chair's message, as well as for the upcoming pact, is important.
Thank you, Yande and Ishan. You've explained that well. We'll leave it at that.
Great. And like I said, I know we still have a few hands up. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I mean, if we have time at the end, maybe we'll get to them, but otherwise we'll follow up. But thank you so much to Terry, Ishan, and Yande for giving us all of this really insightful information. Definitely made me excited for the conference. I know that Terry, you have to go, but Ishan and Yande are sticking around for our consultation. So Terry, thank you so much for being here and giving your super valuable insight. Really appreciated having you here.
All right, thank you so much.
And now I'll pass it to Rachel to get our consultation started here.
Thanks, Annabella, and thank you so much to our panelists for such an interactive and stimulating dialogue. That was really wonderful. As we mentioned at the start, today we'll have you all provide your stories, thoughts, and reflections on what's currently included in the Pact for the Future. This will be an opportunity for you to play around with some of those ideas, give your feedback, give your inputs, and really talk to each other, depending on what area you're interested in. The breakout rooms are organized around the 5 chapters. So there will be 5 breakout rooms, and each room will have 30 minutes to discuss and record inputs and priorities of the participants. And be sure to nominate please keep yourselves muted. Be sure to nominate someone to report back to us, since we are recording this meeting, but we cannot record breakout rooms, unfortunately. So we'll have a reporter come back. It could be the moderator of that breakout room or someone else who is in the room that wants to do that, and give us a rundown of your takeaways, and we'll be able to come back together afterwards. I'll also note that while we all obviously are prioritizing youth and future generations, and if you're coming to this briefing through NGO CSW channels, you're probably also very worried about gender equality and feminist issues. So we want to make sure that even though we are focused on these issues, and these are the closest, like this chapter on youth and future generations is obviously very relevant, but we do encourage you to choose other topics, because as we want to emphasize, like youth and gender equality are all cross-cutting issues, and you can have that perspective on any of these chapters. So we want to make sure that we're not limiting ourselves or siloing ourselves that way. So thank you again to Ishan, Yande, and Terry. And we also want to bring in Tendo and Fatima and Amanda, who are also going to be moderating these breakout rooms. I don't know if you three want to introduce yourselves, since you haven't been able to speak yet today. Whoever wants to go first, Tendo, Fatima, or Amanda.
I think I can go first. Well, thank you so much for inviting us today. My name is Amanda Arroyo Cabezas. I am from Central America, from Costa Rica. I am currently the president of the Youth Climate Council in Costa Rica. Also, I am the director of programs of Nosotras Women Connecting, where we work with menstrual justice and girls' rights. And I am also part of the NGO CSW Youth program. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Is Tendo, do we have Tendo and Fatima here? Yeah, okay, great. Whoever wants to go first, introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Tendo. I am a social activist based in Kampala, Uganda. I use media as a tool for advocacy, and I'm really excited to be part of this program and so many other programs that involve, youth and youth taking over certain narratives and being included in spaces where our decisions are heard and considered. So I'm really, really excited to hear what everyone else has to share and do, a lot of benchmarking to see what's working, what's not, and where we can all improve for this, collective agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tendo. And Fatima?
It looks like, I know that Fatima was in Pakistan and having connection issues. We can jump in and cover for her until she's here, unless she did join. But
okay,
I saw her join and drop out, so we'll incorporate her once she gets her connection back.
Awesome.
Great. I'll open the breakout rooms. Yeah. Welcome back, everyone. Just to reiterate what Rachel said, time got away from us. I wanted to keep us talking, but if anything that you want to say didn't get said, feel free to email us at info@ngocsw.org. And we will make sure it's incorporated into the final advocacy recommendations that we want to produce from this. But I know it's 10:54. We wanted to give everyone a little bit of time to share out like a minute of key takeaways from all that you got to discuss. So I'm going to stop sharing because it's impossible to see everyone that way. But group one, Amanda, what did your guys' group talk about?
Thank you. We had a bit of rough start, a bit silence of the room, but we got a lot of good answers. I think the most important ones are that we need to support more grassroots organizations, understand the challenges that youth-led organizations are having to access the funding, because with that, we can understand how we can change a lot of things. And we can see there, for example, that we're lacking track records. We need more help to access to legal processes to have judicial and more things. We need to understand that we need to see funding with more wide visions, So not only what one perspective, but with different perspective. There was one last comment that someone was saying when we wrap up, but it's very important, and it is that we need to understand that financing is also a very important tool with mitigation and gender. So we need to focus on that too. And one that I think is very important is that we need to restructure the process of funding. So for example, it should be more based on results evidence. So we can know like the impact people are doing in their communities with organizations and see how that is working. And so we can understand how we can give more funding, less funding, or how can we relocate process. So I think those are like the most important ones we have.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. I think group 2, that's Ishan's group, I think, International Peace Group.
Yeah, thanks, Annabelle. I'll be very brief. I'll put in the chat as well some great contributions made by the group. We put together a document. It's got lots of cool good key recommendations. On it. Key themes that popped up include sort of the need to focus on the root causes of conflict, looking at capacity building and support for young people to engage in quality education, to make sure they have access to decent work and employment. We're looking at preventative diplomacy, prevention, a stronger language in chapter 2 on prevention. Sort of a lot of talk about the nexus between climate change and security, health and security, and of course gender equality and security, with a lot of discussion we had in the group on the women, peace and security agenda, on making sure that women and girls are in leadership positions when it comes to peace and security, whether that's being in Security Council negotiations, but also in terms of reintegration, in terms of reconciliation and sort of preventive diplomacy itself. I think I would encourage everyone to read that document. It's got some really, really good recommendations, and we're looking forward to taking them forward, feeding them directly to the member states.
2 pages. You guys really pulled a lot together. Really impressive. Thanks all. Science, tech, and innovation. I think that's Yande's group. What did you all talk about?
Thanks so much, Annabelle. The group was extremely conversational. Thank you to all the participants in it. We talked about curbing technology-facilitated gender-based violence, harmonizing data privacy laws, and encouraging girls and women to be creators and beneficiaries of the digital technologies as well as the internet. A conversation we had was in terms of how we need to promote access to technology. First of all, we need to ensure that young girls and women in all their diversity and intersectional identities can access but also engage with creators of technology and become creators of technology themselves. We also talked about the intersection between migration and digitalization and how Africans can move across the border without any challenges, and ensuring member states harmonize these laws. But lastly, we looked at the impact of machine learning, robotics, and artificial intelligence on laws in Africa in particular, because we had many African participants within our group, but also how we can ensure that these priorities are reflected in the pact.
Wow, really impressive. Group 4, Youth and Future Generations, Tendo. What did your group talk about?
Okay, thank you so much. We do not have a 2-page recommendation, but
okay.
we were able to look at one, like the the divides in our society, so many of which hinder the kind of work that we can do, cross-generational work. And a good submission came in to just really highlight the fact that we should stop saying, things of the older generation and younger generation, or kind of pouring down on age and or what people can do, and more just work collaboratively to see to it that certain things are done, especially if the youth related things. And another thing that really came out again at divide is the gender divide of if we're working with women issues and advocating for women issues, that's not exclusive of men, that we should have a more inclusive conversation, involve the men, or not leave the boy child behind, in order again to have like collaborative efforts. And the other really thing, basically our conversation was around like intergenerational allies, creating intergenerational allies that could, help us have a more inclusive, a more comprehensive aspect to what we're doing as youth, and also a lot of hand-holding. Because if we as youth want to get to places, we have to have intergenerational allies, people who are already in those places and people who can mentor us to get to those places years after they have left. So basically that's, what we were looking at. And I think we had an interesting conversation.
Thanks, Tendo. I like intergenerational allies. All right, last but not least, and I know we had connection problems, so no worries if there's not a 2-page recommendation document, but Fatima, how was your Transforming Global Governance group?
I think global governance was good in terms of the conversation, because I think we had a few questions about what global governance looks like in implementation. And I think some of the recommendations are because like transforming global governance is like the 5th part of like the Pact for the Future, like the zero draft, is that it kind of involves a lot of different UN agencies and addresses lots of parts of the UN systems, and also discussing what it means to kind of address global governance from a different angle. So when you look at it, it seems like a very big, like world government type of system, but you have to kind of go around and see what's not working in these different agencies. So for example, within the Security Council, the General Assembly, strengthening ECOSOC, what is the kind of structure that you kind of have to take? Like I said something that a lot of the work that is done is from a extremely like global north perspective, but most of the work is being done in the global south. So a big part or a platform that can come with the Pact of the Future is that if you're kind of approaching it from a decolonial or another angular lens, that if the work is happening for the global south, the approach towards it also has to come from within. So it's not like extractivist or like kind of becoming savioristic, I guess. And I think it's also about the thing with global governance is that we also discussed that because it's such a big institutional idea, it's very hard for a lot of youth consultations and youth groups to kind of swallow and break down. So a big factor is how can we transform global governance into an implementable model that works region to region. So that's kind of like the rough idea. And we discussed particular clauses within it, like what clauses that we think needs to be strengthened. Like I think people brought up the Peace Building Commission, and then also the cooperation between other UN organizations, and how when you're kind of working on that front, how will the implementation model change within all different structures of the UN? If I have understood that right, but I'm sure if anyone else thinks I'm missing something, because I did have connectivity issues, feel free to put it in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Fatima. I know we're a little over time, and I'm sorry if it seems rushed. I promise that everything that has been said means a lot to us, and we'll actually go into like concrete recommendations after this. And I know that Nairobi is only a few days away, so we're going to do our best to churn this out and get follow-ups to everybody that's on this call as soon as we can. But thank you to Fatima, Ishan, Yande, Tendo, and Amanda. Amanda had to hop off, but for facilitating this, and thank you to all of our participants for speaking up and making sure that your voices were heard in all of the recommendations you produced. Rachel, shall you close us out?
Yeah, no, thank you all so much for coming. I just wanted to plug really quickly that we are having another briefing on Summit of the Future and NGO CSW's Impact Coalition on Monday, mostly about Nairobi and our Impact Coalition. And we'll be sending out information about that very soon. And also, if there are any inputs that people didn't get to, or there was another room they wanted to join, or any other things that didn't come out yet in this consultation, feel free to email them to us at info@ngocsw.org. And just thank you all for joining. I really appreciate the participation, the show out. I think we had a little over 100 people joining us, so thank you so much. And we are glad that everyone was able to make it.
Just a quick one, Rachel. There are communities being formed. Maybe Yande needs to touch on that. We have a Facebook group, a LinkedIn group. So Yande, do you want to jump on and share that with people who want to engage more?
Thanks, Peter. Just a quick one. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined this meeting for the Nairobi conference and in preparation for the future. We have a LinkedIn group as well as a Facebook group where we're encouraging intergenerational collaboration, sharing your projects as well as sharing your recommendations in preparation for the pact. We're also sharing different opportunities in which you can get engaged with. And Peter will share the links in the comment section, but I'll also forward them to NGO CSW to share them via email. Thank you once again.
And we will be sure to disseminate those links. So thank you so much for jumping in with that.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Really appreciate having you all here. Have a good weekend. Gear up for Nairobi.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.